Hello. How are you? I'm your host, Grim, or Jay. Sorry, you caught me setting some stuff up, but tonight's gonna end up being a more shorter night. But I still want to deliver you some quality that, you do deserve, so. Well, well. Hopefully you had a nice night, day, or whatever time it is for you. But without further ado, I'll tell you this now. I will only read two stories, but I'll try to make them really, really good. The first story is my neighbor kept leaving me notes. Now I wish I read them sooner. I moved into my apartment about a year ago. It's nothing fancy, just a small one bedroom on the third floor of a pretty old building. The kind of place where you can hear everything: footsteps in the hall, pipes groaning in the walls, muffled voices through the vents. The guy who lived next door to me was an older man named Mr. Solomon. He kept to himself, always wearing the same gray cardigan, always shuffling down the hall with his head down. I tried saying hi a few times, but he never responded, just nodded and kept walking. Pretty odd if you tell me, but hey, he's minding his own business and doing whatever he wants. Then the notes started appearing. They were small folded pieces of paper slipped under my door. No envelope, no explanation, just short, scribbled messages in shaky handwriting. The first one said, "Do not let it know you see it." I remember laughing, thinking it was some weird old man paranoia. Maybe dementia. I tossed it in the trash and didn't think about it again. Until I got another one. It watches you when you sleep. Okay, creepy. But still, I figured it was just harmless nonsense. Maybe Mr. Solomon had been watching too many horror movies, and I ignored that one too. Then the third note came. Check your closet. Do it now. That one really got to me. I actually did get up and check, half expecting to find something horrible. But there was nothing. Just my clothes, shoes, and a pile of laundry I kept putting off. I almost went next door to tell Mr. Solomon to stop, but I didn't want to be rude. He was old and probably lonely, so I let it go. Then three notes. I woke up to the sound of scratching. It was soft, rhythmic, and coming from my closet. At first, I thought maybe it was a mouse, but the longer I lay there, the more it sounded deliberate. Slow, like something inside was waiting for me to notice. I didn't move, nor breathe. I just stared at the closet door, with my heart hammering. After what felt like hours, the scratching finally stopped. The next morning, I found another note underneath my door. It knows you heard it. I knocked on his door, but there was no answer, and I tried again. Nothing. Later that evening, I asked the landlord if he was okay. The landlord just gave me a strange look and said, "Mr. Solomon? He moved out 2 weeks ago." I felt my stomach drop. That was impossible. That was actually impossible. I had just gotten a note from him the night before, and I went back to my apartment racing, my mind racing. If Mr. Solomon was gone, who had been slipping me those notes? That night I barely slept. I kept hearing things, soft shuffling sounds, occasional creak of my closet door, and I tried telling myself it was my imagination, but I was so worried, so afraid of what came next. And then I woke up. Eventually, I managed to somehow drift asleep, but this was the worst sound yet. Something breathing right next to my bed. It was slow, shallow, and not mine. Not human. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just laid there staring at the ceiling, listening to that ragged breathing. Then from the darkness, a whisper. You should have listened. I don't remember what happened after that. Maybe I passed out. Maybe I ran. All I know is when I woke up this morning, my closet door was wide open. And there was one last note on my nightstand. It likes you now, is what it wrote. I'm writing this from my car. I don't think I'm going to go back inside. Well, that is more than horrifying. If someone is deliberately leaving you stuff with no probable deniability, you may want to confront them, but you may actually even want to listen more to what they're leaving for you. Well, jeez. Well then, let's find our final story. Well, my bad, I'm still trying to find that one good story to me. This right here. This is why I'm scared of woods, and my final warning to those who will believe me. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, or that I had a vivid dream, but I know the truth and I have to tell it. Somewhere before they convince me it never happened, in hopes someone believes me and avoids meeting them. I was entering in a pretty anonymous woods in the northern Italian mountains to pick up some mushrooms, as I often did when the season was right. Immediately something felt out of place. The air wasn't as cold as the late gray autumn day would suggest, but following the warm air stream, I was finding more and more mushrooms, so I didn't stop to wonder about it. I heard something that sounded like a flute, which weirded me out. It came from deep in the woods, seemingly where the warm air was coming from. I admit I was charmed and followed it, despite knowing deep down it wasn't wise. I ended up in a clearing, where the season seemed to change apparently. The sunlight was bright and warm. Birds who should only be around in spring were chirping, and in the middle of it was a girl, playing that flute on a tree stump. Feeling alienated by the sheer contrast with my common sense, I sat down to listen, and she joined me. We simply looked at each other, and she was beautiful with her white hair and amber-colored eyes. We instinctively leaned in to kiss, when the birds flew away scared and she recoiled. At first I was confused when I saw them, shadows lurking closer and closer, whispering things I couldn't understand but that filled me with dread. She got up as if to shield me, but we were surrounded. I could see fear in her eyes as the shadows were close enough to be perfectly visible. Creatures, if they can be called that, with a body that looked halfway between solid and a cloud-like texture, of a black like nothing I've ever seen. as if darkness itself was alive in front of me. But that was nothing. Not even the deadly fangs and claws were that had scared me. The damned eyes, flickering points of light, shining in a seemingly void and never-ending abyss inside the creature. They looked and felt completely against nature, yet they were there, closing in on us. She made the door of light, pushed me in there, and I could see the shadows jumping on her, and she muttered something. She muttered goodbye, her only words. When I opened my eyes, I was at the edge of the woods. I thought about everything, and my basket was still full of mushrooms. With a heart full of fear, I looked back, and sure enough, those shadows were coming for me, and they were fast. I ran for my life. Now that the whispers were for my instincts, I could understand. Those creatures prey on life, any life, and it was my turn. Running wasn't enough with my speed. The shadows caught up and even cut my skin superficially with their claws. I barely made it into the car and got out full speed, but one of those things were on top of my car and slowly spreading until the car was running into a completely void space. I was about to give up and accept whatever fate, but the girl from the clearing was back, and she saved me. I managed to get out, but I saw her stomach pierced and blood coming out of her mouth before she was swarmed. I woke up again in my car, and I could see my skin cut from the claws, damaged cart, and the mushroom basket was still full. I got out and tried to tell the police, only to end up in a mental facility. I know what really happened. No one believes me. And I'm writing to tell every and anyone to avoid those woods. The shadows mainly. Avoid unnaturally warm places. Because I might not have understood, but from what I can understand, we lost the beacon that was keeping the darkness away from us. And I wake up every night screaming. And as they sedate me, I pray when those creatures finally invade, our souls may be able to escape that endless void, at least after death. I hear them whispering, and now I hope that the medication drove me crazy, because I swear every night the whispers are clearer and nearer than the previous, and I know how, and I just know I won't be living longer. I'm not gonna lie, that story was confusing, a little bit of ass. I expected full-on horror, not some sci-fi fantasy shadows versus light. I hate chalking it up to like, yeah, you sound like a crazy person. You sound like you're in a mental facility, but it's ironic that he is. It's just, well, I was expecting more, an actual genuine scare. Not some, I'm about to be clapped by the literal darkness. You know what? Because I had ruined that, let's try to find another story. If we can. My family is dead, and the police think I did it. My family is gone, taken from me. Right before my eyes ripped away like skin off my back. They're dead. My wife and daughter, dead. And the police think it's my fault. Like I would ever do anything so horrible. I love them with all of my heart. How dare these police, these idiots, accuse me of something just Horrible. I thought I heard a noise just now as I'm typing this out, like someone was just outside my shitty hotel room looking for me. He's still out there, the man that killed my family, the man that framed me. I think he's saving me for last. He's close and I can feel it. He took everything, but no one will believe me. Hopefully you will. I'll tell you what happened. I just need someone to believe me. Before it happened, we weren't doing great. You know those unusual familial fights? How the house can just feel tense when disagreements happen? Well, the latest one was about a school field trip. She wanted $60 to go to a museum or something, but money was tight. And I'd always been killing myself on overtime for a year now, just to keep us afloat, but we were drowning in bills anyway. Bills, groceries, clothes, insurance, car payments, the mortgage. God, it was just too much. Well, anyways, I told her we can't afford to send her, but my wife insisted that we could spare $60, so I had to be the bad guy. I told her we couldn't, and that was final. After that, I was getting a cold shoulder from both of them. So when I came home that evening after another 12-hour shift, I wasn't surprised to receive another sad excuse for a welcome home. My daughter sat in the living room doing homework on our coffee table, folders and papers strewn about, and backpacks sat on my chair. She didn't even acknowledge me when I walked in. My wife noticed me at first from past our living room and the kitchen, and she gave me a lukewarm, "Hey, how was work?" I walked past my daughter and kissed my wife in the kitchen. I felt disappointed. She kissed me dispassionately, like she didn't even want to kiss me in the first place. "Long," I said. I replied, taking off my steel toes. "How's dinner coming?" "It's going alright. I'm working with what I have." "Did you go to the store on your way home?" That was her little jab of the night. Lately, she loved to needle me. She would tell me about her discontentment in passing, discontentment about not having all the food she wants, or about how small the new house was, or about how we haven't had a date in over a year. I knew it. She felt neglected and discontent. Just another thing going wrong that I wasn't fixing fast enough for her. "No, dear, I was too tired to go to the grocery store." "Well, then it's soup again tonight. I don't have ingredients to make much else." There was so much more behind those words, more than I could put on the page. She knew I hated the soup we got from the food pantry. She knew I hated going to this food pantry at all. She was saying that I failed to provide for my family with dinner. And now we have to rely on strangers for help. And because I failed to provide, I should be punished with food I hated. I'm sorry, I was at work all day. Well, I don't have a car to go to the grocery. You have the only car, so you have to be the one to go to the store. I don't want to make soup again, honey. That honey stung from her. It was like a sweet shot filled with poison. Another jab, and anger swelled into me. I already knew that I was the one that had to go to the store. I had our only car, and I fucked it up. But she just had to twist that knife a little deeper. Even after all I provided, she still had the nerve to be ungrateful, to tell me I wasn't doing enough. I was about to tell her off, tell her she needs to have some patience with me, and that I'm her husband and I deserve respect, you know? But my thoughts were interrupted by a loud banging sound outside. My wife and daughter stopped and stared at the back door with wide, fearful eyes. Deer in the headlights, waiting for a car to crash through her house. And nothing came. They slowly went back to how they were. She continued stirring her soup, and my daughter went back to her homework. And I just sat at the dining room table. I took a breath and tried to calm down. I was too exhausted to have another fight. Wordlessly, I went to go sit in the living room, and my daughter still didn't greet me. She didn't even acknowledge me, but she knew I was there. I could tell. She was tense and nervous and acted like a bomb just sat next to her. "Hey, kiddo." "Hi, Dad," she said quietly, as if anything louder might make me explode. "What you working on?" I asked with as much enthusiasm as I could muster, hoping she would match it. "Schoolwork." She said dryly, but she was a whole nother issue. She had gone quiet a while back, disconnected herself. Gone were the days of Daddy's little girl. Now she was a stranger who was afraid of me. I guess that's what happens when you're the bad guy too many times. "Can you give me more than a couple of words, sweetheart? I missed you at work today, and I'd love to talk to you." She was frozen, afraid to look up and afraid to look at me. "Kiddo, I'm your dad. I just want to talk to you. I want to hear about school, your hobbies, your friends, just anything, please." She was fighting back tears. "May I go to my room?" she squeaked in a near whisper. I said, "Why?" I dropped my enthusiasm. "Why can't you just talk to your old man? I'm your dad." My wife interrupted, saying she's had a long day and has a lot of homework. Just let her go to her room. "Oh, so you get to know about her day, and but I don't? I'm not asking for much. I just want to talk to my daughter. Why won't you let me?" But another noise shook the house, much louder than the first. My daughter began to cry. My wife let out a yelp. I started to swear to myself as I went outside to figure out what the noise was about. When I came outside, I found a man standing by our garbage bins. Garbage covered the driveway, apparently thrown around by the man, and he was dressed like a factory worker. He wore a coat, a Carhartt shirt, jeans, and steel-toe boots. The outfit looked like it could have been from one of mine. He stood facing away from me. His hands were bloodied and swollen, like he just got through punching something. "It's not right, you know," he said to me, still facing away. "Who the hell are you? Please get off my property." Get the hell off my property," I said. He ignored me. "It's not right the way they treat you," he said to me. "What the hell are you talking about?" But he said, "You're a hard-working man, an honest man. You work your ass off to give them a place to sleep. You buy them food to eat, and they don't even care. They aren't grateful, so what the hell are you even doing this for?" "Because I love them," I answered. "But do they love you? Do they even like you? Do they even know you anymore? They don't treat you like a husband or a father. They use you. They take everything you give them without a second thought, and then stick their hands out and ask for more. And what do you get in return? Passive aggression and one-word answers. You give away all of your love, and you get none in return." I retorted back and said, "That's not true." "Fuck you, man. You don't know what you're talking about. They love me. We're just in a rough spot right now. That's all." I told him with my heart beating out of my chest, threatening to burst with anger at the nerve of the stranger. But deep down, he was right. I did feel used, unappreciated, and empty. And he retorted back, "You're lying to yourself. You're letting yourself be deceived by them. She doesn't love you no more. She thinks you're weak. Worthless. She asked for too much. How much are you expected to give her? You've given her all you have, and it isn't enough. You're not enough for her. Hers is a special kind of cruelty. Does it make your blood boil? That parasite leeches off you without a care for our host. And don't even get me started on your daughter. How endlessly frustrating. How much effort does it take? How much can you try when she can't even look at you? She's scared of you for what? Trying to be a loving father? Trying to talk to his daughter? How many times do you have to roll that boulder up the hill before you realize that she doesn't love you either? They hate you. They're killing you. They pile the world onto your shoulders and hate that you fall under the weight. They deserve to know how much you hurt. He turned to me and I saw his face. He was a tired man, stretched too thin. Dark circles around his eyes, hair oily and unwashed, mouth dry with cracked lips. Every feature on his face was twisted in disgust, hatred, rage. His breathing was heavy and his hands shook with adrenaline. His eyes locked on mine and I realized two things. He looked exactly like me, and he was holding one of our kitchen knives. I became stuck, completely unable to move. My doppelganger seemed to notice. He paid me no mind as he walked past me. I tried to run, I tried to move at all, but nothing happened. I was a passenger in my own body with no control. He turned me so I was facing the house. I was forced to stand there and watch everything unfold through the windows. I saw him stomp up to my door and let himself inside, slamming the door back shut. I heard the man rampage through my house. He slammed the soup off the stove, letting the giant pot clatter loudly into the wall, and my wife screamed my name. I struggled for control again, but I had none. I heard my own voice scream out in anger before my wife was stabbed, and the sound of steel on bone pierced my ears. I saw her eyes. She gurgled in pain as her lungs filled with blood. And the worst part is I heard her ribs snap. All that while a voice like mine screamed incomprehensibly in a rage about love and patience and kindness. I thought I suffered the worst, seeing that happen to my wife, but I heard my daughter crying. I knew she was as frozen as I was, powerless to stop what came next. She was an innocent child after all. And something that still sounded like my voice, but more demonic.
Why won't you just talk to me?
You know, fuck it. Why won't you just talk to me? It retorted again, over and over and over. And it sounded muffled, echoing through the walls of the house. She suffered the same fate as her mother. I was still frozen as the back door opened and he walked leisurely over to me. Blood splattered his shirt and it wicked wildly, rolling off the hydrophobic fabric and dripped into the pavement. His arms were buried in raised scratch marks, defensive wounds from my wife fighting back. His steel-toed boots were drenched in gore. It's just too much. I can't even remember anymore. With a sardonic smile, he got up close, and I was powerless to stop him as he scratched my arms and rubbed my family's blood into my hands. He put his clothes on me and mine on him. They were soaking wet, and I began to shiver. That blood trickled through me. It was my wife and my daughter's blood, and he put the knife in my paralyzed hand before stepping back and admiring his handiwork. Satisfied, he flashed me a quick red smile, and like that he was gone. When I was able to start moving, first thing I did was I got my car and I ran away. He took them from me, and I can't do anything about it. If the police find me, it's over. I'm done. They'll think that I did that to them. I didn't. I couldn't. Everyone has bad thoughts sometimes, but that's not evidence. That's not real. I'm not capable of that, but those idiots won't listen to me. It's not fair, and I don't deserve this. I'm a good husband. I'm a good father. If I could just... Well, I would finish that thought. But someone is loudly banging on the door. And that's where he leaves off with that. Utterly horrifying, utterly terrifying to just. That's one thing that, this is something personal for me, is that I would love to have a family to call my own. I want things to work out, to go well. But what if any event to where it's just like I end up raising and being around ungrateful people, no matter what I'm trying to do, no matter what I'm doing, it's still not the best, it's still not what they deserve or whatever. And then they use that against me, and it's just, I'm a very patient, calm, collected, and reasonable person, but we have our limits. And unfortunately, I think for this guy, even if it was his doppelganger or whatever, it's just knowing that you sat back and let that happen to your family is horrifying. Especially something happening to your own child and the person that you loved, that you provided for. You failed them. It's just, that fucks with you. But something tells me he knew that he did it. That's my theory, at least. Well, this has been Grimm's Horror Tales. Thank you for sticking around, and I tried to make that last story something better than the second story. Please continue to do what you can for yourself. You will make it to wherever you're trying to get to. You just have to see it through. Adios.